Danielle versus Maria. Now, guys, I got to set the stage for this because as much as I appreciate a good grappling match, right? I'm talking about One Championship, Amazon Prime coming up next week. But look, I have never been satisfied. Chael Sonnen, on a personal level, I have never been satisfied that we ever achieved what we fully set out to do in 1993 when we got into this world called mixed martial arts in the first place. We didn't even settle in on the name, just to remind you of that. No holds barred, this was called. This was called Vale Tudo. When I started fighting, I called myself a Vale Tudo fighter. I have the foggiest idea what that means. I think that it's Portuguese. I said I was a Vale Tudo fighter because my favorite fighter, Marco Huas, said that he was a Vale Tudo fighter. I don't even know what it means. At that time, I fought 13 men before I even found out what it was. I'm telling people I was a Vale Tudo fighter. I mean, it's just one of these things. We don't know what we're just learning the sport. Chachery comes out. Guess what he said? He tells this massive grappling publication that he wants to stoke the fire between Sambo and Jiu-Jitsu. Now, this is Maria, just so you understand. This is the Russian Sambo champion versus Danielle Kelly, who's won everything that you could possibly win. I mean, I watch her compete all the time over on Flow and Who's Number One. Ricardo's always talking about her. So, there was nobody else that could do it but Chachery. It had to be Chachery. Now, I would love to do that too. I would love to get this Sambo and Jiu-Jitsu thing down. We just saw this tested to some degree. But we saw this tested between Islam and Charles Oliveira. And this is supposed to be the great divider. Now, Khabib was willing to test that at any point. But Jiu-Jitsu never quite put that person forward. They put a bunch of black belts forward, but they never put quite that person that the community was willing to get behind. When this goes to the ground, this is a guy that can handle the Sambo. Khabib walks out to a weigh-in. This is once upon a time, but he comes out with a t-shirt on that says, if Sambo was easy, it would be called Jiu-Jitsu. Now, I'm only giving you this back story. Because if Khabib does that right, you see where it's salacious, and that's what Khabib was looking for. If I come out and do it, I'm being salacious, and you see what I'm looking for. You see where I'm agitated and trying to upset. Chachery can do it. Why? Because he's going to feature them both. He's going to pay them both, and he doesn't have a horse in the race. He's not setting out to prove that one is better than the other. He's setting out to bring them together, and let's get some proof on which is better than the other. There's nobody else that can do this. It's got to be the promoter that treats them all equal. So you've got Maria. She's going to take on Kelly. Now, I think that you guys understand this, okay? Allow me to condescend. If you are the Russian Sambo champion, you're the world champion. That is not an absolute statement, but it's close enough. Truly, it truly is. In the world of wrestling, when the Olympic Games and or the World Championships roll around, which is the same tournament, every 4 years they call it the Olympic Games. The same tournament. Each country gets to send their representative. Best on earth are going to work it out in a competitive architecture, and we're going to give out medals to 1, 2, and 3, which we will call gold, silver, and bronze. It is argued that if the country of Russia could send more than one representative, they would get more than one medal. Of the 3 medals of gold, silver, and bronze, broad stroke statement, between all the styles of Greco-Roman freestyle and women's wrestling and all the weight classes, Russia gets a medal in every single one of them. Broad stroke. And Tbilisi and other tournaments have been argued where Russia can enter 4 and 5 guys in the same weight and go clean up against everybody in the world. That the number 2 guy and the number 3 guy is also Russian. It just so happens that the number 1 guy is Russian, and he's the one that gets to go, and the other 2 never get heard of. Now, I'm only suggesting this for you because I'm very into what Chachery's doing. And we saw Rontello, right? I went and watched him train. I brought you guys this inside video, got a little bit of his strategy, but he goes in there against the reigning Sambo world champion. And it wasn't overly competitive. And what was a bigger surprise for me is that Rontello was also able to control the takedown. Now, Rontello himself, he didn't get into the X's and O's of the match very heavy, but he did talk about that. He said, I got to test my wrestling. Between this guy's sweeps and his arm throws, he's likely to get on top, but I'd like for him not to. I'd even like to get him down. It was a simple comment, but it was the only comment that he made for the X's and O's. Now, it was a pretty one-sided match, particularly when you came to lower body. If you understand the rules of Sambo, that wouldn't strike you as a huge surprise, but that was on a Friday night. on a Friday night, Chachery, whose goal is to kind of retest this between Sambo and Jiu-Jitsu, kind of get this flame going again. I'm quoting him. On Friday night, it would look as though he established that, and it was Jiu-Jitsu. Well, hold on a second, because if you go to the very next day, 24 hours later, you now have Islam versus Charles, but you get the other result. Sambo, dominant, victory. So not a whole lot has been resolved. That's all that I'm sharing for you, right? Like, there's different styles and there's different people. And I will just tell you as a wrestler, when we had somebody fail, we would find somebody else, put them in, they'll get it right. When Chuck Liddell knocked out Kevin Randleman, wrestling didn't say, well, Chuck's got the answer to wrestler. We said, bring in Randy Couture. Just the way that it goes. So I'm only offering for you. Well, Chachery is openly admitting what it is he was doing. Guys, make no mistake, that's precisely what's happening. Precisely. It is Jiu-Jitsu's representative versus Sambo's representative. They went into the gyms, they went into the rankings, they looked at the results, they emerged. Daniel Kelly. They went to Russia itself and found the champion. I do think between those two contests that I just laid out for you, both the grappling match and the MMA fight, I do think that there is some lessons that are going to continue to repeat themselves. The sport of grappling, jiu-jitsu, catch wrestling, but this sport, and it can tie right into the flexibility of Eddie Bravo, which changed the initial system we were all taught, and it can tie right into the lower body attacks of the Danaher Death Squad. But it is now a different game, right? This is not your father's jiu-jitsu. What Mark Kerr did in 2001, that's not what they're doing now. I'm just sharing for you that it is different. And Sambo, which doesn't have the same respect and the same attack shown to some of the reefs, some of the knee bars, some of the manipulations below the waist, it's going to have to be careful. It can work that out. It's got very good coaches, it's got very good instructions. I'm just bringing this to your attention early, because Kelly does use a flexibility. She'll roll under, she'll come underneath you. She'll attack those legs. She'll stretch you out if you give her a chance. She's got the fastest ever submission victory at Who's Number One, just to put it in perspective for you, but she did that lower body. Now, even though she finished with a knee bar, if you guys are familiar with that match, she was willing to use a reversal. She's willing to come over those legs to distract you to come back up on top. Not necessarily Craig Jones-esque, where she's going to stay down there till she solves it. I'm just bringing for you that Sambo is going to have to pay attention. I think Sambo's got plenty of things that we're going to want to steal from. But Jiu-Jitsu has some things that Sambo needs to steal from. You got to use history as your greatest trajectory to the future. If Maria is prepared for the flexibility, if she is prepared for the lower body attack, see, I really like to see more of that stand-up. I like to see who comes off the feet. I realize that Daniel Kelly oftentimes sits and pulls guard right away. It takes the takedown away, but you still have the passes. It's still important. And I don't think that anybody could go out, he's stoking it. He's saying I'm picking a fight. Quoting Chachery here, he said, I'm stoking it. I'm stoking and encouraging this battle to finally take place. I'm going to bring in many different representatives over all the genders and a bunch of different weight classes, but I do want to get this result. There's nobody else that could say that. Anybody else would be taking a side. Anybody else would be picking a fight. It was said by the right guy. It's going to be tested for the second time on Amazon Prime.